Hi folks, it's Mayor Victoria Gearity here with you on Friday. It's Good Friday, which is a very special day in the lives of so many Christians around the world. And as we get started here, I will go ahead and share this to a couple of pages. If you've tuned in, then please do also share it as well to let folks know that they can start watching. And if you have any questions, to go ahead and post them right now, and I'll try to get to them before I sign off a little later today. We've been averaging between 12 and 20 few minutes, and let's go ahead and share this on my page, and I will share it to a couple of other outlets, and I invite you to share it as well. Here we go. To a page, I'll share it to nope. Okay. If you here we go. Oh, sorry for that lengthy dead air time there. I do have a few things I want to update folks on. We have as much communication as we can regularly with every level of government. And that means every day I get at least one email from the county giving me the updated number of positive cases in the village of Ossining. That number obviously continues to grow each day. We also know that that is not nearly representative of the number of positive cases that exist. That is the number of official positive cases of people who have been tested positive for the virus who live in the village of Ossining. And as we pointed out, the vast majority of those positive test cases have been conducted at our own local open door, which is a good reason for why we have as many positive cases as we do. And yet still there we know, in fact, if you saw the governor's message today, he talked about though New York State has done more testing than other state, and we have ramped up our ability to do testing, we still have not nearly the amount of testing that we need now or that we will be needing to be able to open back up. So that's something that he is certainly working on, getting greater testing access. He was pushing for the federal government to get involved to be able to get production up to the scale that we need it to, and then to be able to get to the next level of testing, which would be to test for the immunity, and those of us who may have had it and had very mild symptoms or not even had symptoms, to find out if we have developed the immunity, and if that means indeed that if we go back out into the world, we would no longer be a threat to contract it or to spread it to others. And also golf courses and boat launches have been shut down throughout the state at this time. I did appreciate, I don't know if you like that new, the New York Tough tagline that we've been using, that his description of it today was being New York Tough is being disciplined, being unified, being loving, and being smart. And that was quite a blend of characteristics that we have certainly seen be at the foundation of our ability to slow the spread, which we have really started seeing some significant progress toward achieving. On a local level, this morning we held our Office of Emergency Management meeting. Typically we've been doing that on Friday afternoons during this time of crisis, but because it's Good Friday, we did it in the morning for folks who are would normally be having the holiday that they would normally be having, although obviously everything is different today than it once was. And one of the things that came out of it was just another kudos and thank you to OVAC for being so proactive in much of what they have done for throughout our local community and even the region with their sanitizing has been incredibly helpful in ensuring as safe a working environment as possible. But they have also been very proactive in getting access to the protective gear that they need for their own staff, and for our municipal staff, and that's something that we're extremely conscious of. We have essential workers that are keeping our community functioning on the front lines in law enforcement, in picking up your trash, so for our sanitation workers, so that all of that does not build up during this time where contracting a disease and keeping a sanitary environment is so important. We have the parks team is still working, and of course you want to still have safe drinking water, so our water plant workers are still working under some difficult circumstances, so making sure that they have the proper protective gear is essential. And it's these Office of Emergency Management meetings that we have now weekly. We generally have them monthly all the time throughout the year, but now doing it weekly is also a time for us to check in. And the people who participate in those meetings are from the village. It's myself representing the Board of Trustees. The Office of Emergency Management, that role is actually led by our village manager. She is the one who's in charge of emergency management. Obviously, she works very closely with the department heads, particularly in law enforcement, and depending on what the issue is, it would often be law enforcement that would take the most active role. If it's a snow emergency, then it's Public Works that takes the most active role, and we all work together. And so it's several department heads from the village, and we partner with the town, so the town supervisor is with us, the highway superintendent is with us, and that's a really valuable meeting each week. This was a pretty short meeting, just touching base and seeing where folks are at, and as I said, one of the most valuable pieces of information that came out was making sure that we have regular access to the protective gear that our municipal workers are going to need, and we thank the leaders in OVAC who are doing such a great job at being on the forefront of garnering that, getting some of that in for that material here to keep our community safe. I did want to mention that there's been some talk. There was a news story this morning, and about supermarkets, and there were measures that were taken in Greenburgh, and so I looked into what the Greenburgh measures were and just read. I got an email from Paul Feiner, the town supervisor there. He's very good about communicating all of his ideas with other municipal leaders, and that's sort of one of the interesting benefits of having somebody who's been in a position for a very long time, who has developed. I'm never a supporter of term limits, and I think there's good examples of people who've been in office for a number of years using their institutional knowledge to do interesting things. Let the voters kick them out on a local level anyway, when we're not talking about campaign finance reform needs. The stipulations for the Greenburgh measures that are in place, I won't call it a law because it's an emergency declaration. It's part of the emergency declaration. It would apply for food stores of greater than 1,000 feet. So obviously all of the big chain stores, but maybe not some of the small markets. There's a requirement that there be 1 hour a day set aside for seniors, that there be a limit to the number of customers permitted in the store at any time to be sure to maintain the 6 foot distance, that there be 6 foot distance lines marked outside and at the checkout areas, as well as having adequate staff on hand to remind customers to abide by these. There will be a requirement of hand sanitizer and or gloves, and if available, masks for grocery store employees, and to post guidelines in the store for hand washing. And then for customers, there will be a requirement for gloves and or sanitizing wipes to be available to customers prior to entering the store. There would be a requirement that the cart handles be wiped between customers, and that there be this is a big one that drives people crazy, that there be a receptacle at the exit for disposal of gloves and masks. And then it was written in a way that it could be renewed or amended every 5 days. I know that there's been talk of hopefully having that they might add. I know that this town supervisor would like to add a requirement that everyone who enters the store as a customer or a staff member have their temperature taken by one of the infrared thermometers. The trouble is with trying to move forward with that regulation is that it's almost impossible to get those today. They are so highly sought after. So that is would probably not come to pass. I will say there's been some pushback from, I've seen in news articles from other municipal leaders. I've not been asked to undertake this or to move this forward in the village of Ossining, but I will say I'm seeing many of these measures being taken by stores already. I think we've all been to stores and stood behind taped lines, and we've seen just a constant increase in the presence of masks and gloves, whether they're being disposed of and replaced and cleaned in exactly the right way. I'm not sure. I feel like there's been sort of an influx of protective gear usage without the education and guidelines to go along with it. But we certainly have seen a dramatic increase in that, both in people in stores and just customers out and about in the stores and in the community. I sure would like to see a receptacle at the exit for disposal of gloves and masks. Maybe requiring that as a rule is something to that would make it happen. Then the challenge becomes the enforcement of this. I think these are all mostly great recommended best practices, even acknowledging that the availability of masks has been something that's a challenge, so that there is an acknowledgement of if available. And we know that we have a challenge just getting it for our own staff members, and we work with first responders and people in the medical community. So it's not something to you can't make a regulation lightly without recognizing the challenge and people being able to fulfill it. The trouble with it is we then have to decide how much we can reasonably dedicate to the enforcement of it. But maybe the start is to talk about sharing the recommendations for best practices. And I think I'm seeing a lot of these already being recommended or already being undertaken. So the enforcement maybe is not where we should be focusing our attention, but maybe the recommendations for best practices, as Jose, it is. Those are all good ideas. Agreed. And I see some more people have tuned in. Thanks so much for tuning in. I've been enjoying the opportunity to connect with everyone during these Facebook Live sessions. I welcome your questions. You can ask. Hey, Mayor Murphy. So Tom Murphy just tuned in. He's one of the folks I think that I saw quoted in one of the articles related to some of the measures for grocery stores that had been undertaken. So Tom, if that's you, if you had anything to add to that, I just went through what some of the guidelines were, what I would take as best practices guidelines for how grocery stores might conduct themselves. I don't know that I would have the same approach as the town supervisor in Greenberg, but I do think that there's some wise ideas in there that I'm already seeing grocery stores undertaking on their own, just as protective measures to protect their workers and their staff. It is an unusual Good Friday for us in Ossining. Usually on Good Friday, there is a really, really big celebration in Ossining, the largest Good Friday celebration in Westchester, and News 12 is here, and it's a big, elaborate reenactment, essentially, of the Bible story, and it goes through our village, and that is obviously not happening this year. And I know that the Passover Seder for many folks was very different this year than we've ever had before, and Easter and Good Friday for Christians who observe is obviously going to be so different. People are missing out on their being able to connect in their religious ceremonies, at least in person, and just being able to sit around the table with everyone now is being handled with a cell phone or a laptop. And I see I've gotten a couple of comments here. Jose, as long as you guide citizens in the right direction, they will abide by the rules. Maybe just posting large signs would help. I think that is the right mindset, giving people the tools and the information. Most people do want to do what's being recommended. And Mayor Murphy, I agree that most grocery stores are following the CDC best practices. Keep up the good work. And maybe that's really the approach to take is giving an attaboy to the stores who are really taking the CDC best practice recommendations seriously, and encouraging them to continue to do so. And I know that our police have attended to concerns that have been raised if there were people sort of congregating outside of a store, the store may have been doing the right thing and saying, we've got too many people, please wait here at the door. We've all had that. I had walked into Walgreens the other day, and the man counted, okay, you can come in, and now we're up to 10. And then there was a store down on Spring Street that was limiting the number of folks coming in, but then they needed a little help making sure that the folks who were waiting in line outside on the sidewalk were spreading out enough. So those are the kind of guidelines that we're all figuring out, and it's so new to everyone. It's tough to say cut some people some slack, because every measure that we're undertaking is not just a, hey, wouldn't that be nice? It could actually save someone's life. And I think that's where I will close today. We talked about the latest number we have for positive cases in the village of Ossining is 363, and that's just the official number. That's just of the people who have been tested and gotten their test results back. We know that there are many people who believe that they have had it and they have not been tested. There are such limited testing that the tests are not given out to everyone, even if they seem symptomatic. They're just encouraged to stay home and call their doctor if they need medical attention. But since there's little that can be done for most of us, it is essential that we continue our practices of physical distancing. That said, it is daunting when we learn each day of another person who we know personally, or people that we know that are out in the public eye, and the hundreds that are dying each day. And we see those numbers, and it's increasingly difficult it's increasingly difficult to just see them as numbers. We're seeing them as the people that we know, our coworkers, people that we've admired for years, our friends' mothers, and it is important to keep in mind that the other numbers that we don't see, the numbers that are harder to count, are the thousands of lives that are being saved every day because of what you are doing, what everyone is doing when they are staying home, when they're keeping their children with them, when they are being very, very careful when they do go out and keeping their distance. Please let the essential workers do what they need to do. And please continue what you are doing, even during this holiday weekend when you will so, so very much want to be with family. Our actions every day that we stay home and that we maintain these very difficult regulations of distancing are saving lives. So hopefully you can take some solace in that and feel like we are all heroes when we do exactly what we should be doing. And that's the best thing that we can do for each other right now. For all of those who observe, I wish you a very happy Easter. Take care.